Good afternoon. Well, it's over. Conventional offices are dead. Conventional working is dead. We just have to accept it. We've now got the perfect storm of events that will prove this point. And let me explain a little bit about why I believe this and actually what Vodafone's doing about it and how we're kind of eating our own dog food in the process. So the first of the four reasons I believe that conventional working and conventional offices are dead is simply because the original workplace rules that you all use were developed nearly 70 years ago. And there's not many things that were invented 70 years ago that are still current in today's workplace or work practice. The second thing is that customer expectations are changing faster than the traditional workplace has the ability to cope with them. And I'll expand on that a bit. Third reason is of Generation Y. Generation Y being people born after roughly 1982, depending on what year you want to pick. But the fact that they're coming into the workplace and they're changing things considerably as well. And lastly, the fourth reason why things are changing is just the economic environment that we're in today. So four reasons, but let me bulk them out a little bit, give you a bit more flesh on the bone. So the first thing about the office rules that you abide by and why they are 70 or 80 years out of date and why they are now redundant. At the time that most office rules were invented, there was no communication. The principle of attendance, the principle of proximity was essential to conduct business because if you couldn't see someone, you couldn't communicate with them. But of course that's all gone, but interestingly you still abide by a lot of these rules. But you do it unconsciously because when you started work, that's how it worked. I can give you another example. For instance, out of the people in the audience, in the course of a week, just put your hand up if you go to a meeting room and have a meeting. Simple question. Okay, that's pretty universal. So meeting rooms were invented so that people could talk being isolated from the noise of the production line. So can I just ask the people that put their hands up, how many of you work in businesses that have noisy production lines in the same building? Oh, that's interesting. 2 of you. Strange, isn't it? But you also use meeting rooms. Second area, I'll come back to the workplace changes that we've done soon, is customer expectations. Customer expectations are changing so fast and traditional workplaces just can't cope with the rate that they're changing. I think the reason that customer expectations are changing is because they're somehow indexed to how the consumer values time. And because they're placing so much importance on how they value time, that is forcing them to reevaluate their expectation of brands. Brands then have to react, and the brands can't react because they're constrained by the way that they currently work. Third reason is Generation Y. Generation Y, this oft talked about generation. So people born, let's call it after 1982. How many of you were born after 1982? 4 of you, okay. How many of you were born, idle question, between 1960 and 1982? So you're Generation X. Very good. I guess there's a couple of you that are pre-1960, but as my 15-year-old would say, you're pretty near death, so you don't count. We're all Generation X, right? We were brought up in a certain way. The most powerful device I had at home when I started work was a colour TV. When I went into work, they had really serious kit, IBM mainframes and stuff like that. They had really advanced technology, telex machines. And then they went on to even more superior technology like fax machines. And you learnt how to use those, and you respected the technology in your office. Generation Y is very different. By the time they get to work, they already are using more superior technology than they receive as an employee in their first job. If you look at the processing power of the average home computer, for those that are connected, then you will see it's significantly higher than what they actually get when they get to work. They can use Microsoft Office. They can use Google. They can use Facebook. They can use instant messaging. They can use video conferencing. All of these things are very straightforward. When I started work, only 3% of people could touch type, and most of them came out of secretarial college. 70% of all people starting work in my company can touch type as graduates. So Generation Y comes in with a different set of attitudes when it comes to technology, but probably more importantly, they come in with a different mindset on how they want to work. When we started, we were terrified of the boss. It was a hierarchy, we understood. You worked your way up through the company, you eventually got into a manager's position, one day you got an office, you got a company car, you got a secretary, you worked your way further up the business. That's the way it worked. Generation Y don't think about that. They assume that work is a community. They don't assume, they understand it has a hierarchy, but they don't assume the hierarchy is dominant. So the interesting thing is that when Generation Y come into the workplace, their employee engagement scores plummet by 60% within the first 20 weeks of actually starting work, because the rules around the workplace and the way that the workplace is constructed is totally alien to the sense of community. Fourth reason, as I said, is the changing economic environment. And at the end of the day, I think we're all printing more red ink these days than we were a couple of years ago. So what you have is a perfect storm. Old rules that just don't work anymore, that haven't been challenged for a very long time. Customer expectations that are moving so fast that the way that the workplace is organised, they can't cope. This Generation Y, which in just 5 years' time, there will be more Generation Y in the workplace than Generation X. It will be interesting in 5 years' time, if I ever get invited back, to see whether the composition of this room has actually switched to be dominant Generation Y. But for sure, in your company, it will be dominant Generation Y. And lastly is the recession, which is just accelerating everything I've talked about. So the question is that's fine, lovely, okay, I hear you, what the hell are you doing about it at Vodafone? So what we did was we started a project actually 5 years ago when some of these things were in play in the Netherlands. And we rebuilt, we didn't rebuild, we refurbished a set of offices in Amsterdam, which was actually designed around Generation Y, was designed around satisfying customer expectations, and it was designed around scrapping a lot of the old workplace rules. It turned out to be very successful. We decided to bring it to the UK to see if we can scale it up. I have the joy of having 7,500 staff directly employed and another 7,500 that work for me through outsourcers. And we decided to apply it to that company to see if it could work. So what have we actually done? So the first thing we've done is we've redesigned our offices so they're built on the basis of community. So the principal core of all of our buildings, and these are existing buildings, they're not brand new posh buildings in the centre of town, Matt, is that we put a coffee shop right at the heart of the buildings and we made that the centre of the community. We have 7 coffee shops at our campus in Newbury. They seat over 2,000 people between those coffee shops. All meetings of less than 6 people take place in the coffee shops, unless it's your personal review or you need video conferencing. All meetings of under 6 people. So the buzz in the centre of our community is immense. We have a number of things that you may have. For instance, nobody has an office. I don't have an office. I sit in open plan. Nobody owns a desk. You can sit wherever you want. If I don't get in early, somebody's next to my desk. Although when I growl at them, they run away, actually, in fairness. None of my direct reports have desks. No one has a desk. There are no offices, sorry. We do have desks, but we don't have offices. The other thing we don't have is we don't have secretaries manning machine gun towers outside their bosses' offices to stop people getting in and communicating with the bosses. So we have an entirely open plan office. Nobody has a private office. No reserved meeting rooms. Nothing. All departments are split up. We have no tribal areas because you can sit wherever you want. All of our support functions, such as finance and HR, are embedded inside their respective departments that they serve, such as consumer or enterprise or wholesale. We have a 100% clean desk policy, which lots of companies claim, but very few operate. 100% clean desk policy means that we take anything that's left on the desk at the end of the day and we incinerate it that night, even if it's the pictures of your loved ones. Causes interesting conversations, that one. The reason we do it is so that people can't leave something on the desk that symbolically says, actually, this is my desk. And that's very important. So in our campus, we have very few rules, but they are enforced 100%. We reckon we have about 9 rules, depending on how you categorize them. Let me give you an example of how good that is for a business like ours. When the government decides to change its VAT rate, for instance, I have 8 billing systems and 57 IT systems that I have to alter, often in 72 hours. I need 175 people from 11 departments to work flat out to get that VAT change done. In the space of me sending out one text, I can clear a floor, get the whole 175 people together, and they work absolutely on the project and deliver it in a number of days. Because there are no departments. There are no segmented areas. Nobody owns a desk. They can just move in, occupy one floor of a building, and get on with the task. And at the end of the day, it's the task that matters. It's not about where they sit. We have 100% mobile phones in our company. No great surprise, but we have no fixed phones. Not one. 5,500 people, not one fixed phone. Actually, I'm lying. We have one fixed phone. According to my license, I have to have a fixed phone so the Prime Minister can call me if a nuclear bomb is dropped on London. This has always struck me as slightly odd, since he'll probably be dead. So we have one fixed phone. But apart from that, we have 5,500 people, no fixed phones. 100% laptop, 100% Wi-Fi. If people want to sit on the stairwells and have meetings, that's where they sit. Since we don't allow you to use a meeting room, if there's less than 6 people, you will find they sit anywhere and everywhere. Also works outside in the gardens as well. We have tried to, and we are systematically eradicating one of the old workplace methods or tools that you all use that goes all the way back to the Egyptian period, which is papyrus, or paper as people tend to call it these days. We've eradicated 97% of all the paper that we use with customers. We've eradicated 78% of all paper internally. We've now got to the point where we have eradicated so much paper and so much photocopying that one of the major photocopier companies that I used to supply with mobile phones has thrown us out because we are damaging their business. The other thing is not just about taking away, because I've talked about lots of things we've taken away. We've actually added a whole bunch of things back in. We allow all our employees to access any social media site that they want. There are no restrictions on using internet at all, other than, obviously, pornography and things like that. We encourage all of our employees to put personal photographs on their screensavers and on their desktops and to carry them on their laptops. Everybody, of course, brings their laptops to meetings because we don't have paper, so therefore everyone brings their laptops if they want to see look at pictures of their family because it's a boring meeting. That's fine by me. We also have a 2-day induction program that systematically takes people through the rules of how we work and make sure they understand. And we also take all of our contractors through that program as well. If contractors, and they tend to be people from Accenture for some strange reason, can't fit in with the way that they work, they are thrown off site. So one of the great joys of my job, actually, is throwing contractors off site for failing to keep up with the culture that we promote. We've changed all of our meeting structures. You have lots of meetings. I'm willing to bet you have lots of meetings. We have destroyed statutory meetings in abundance. Over 50% of all meetings have gone. Because actually you don't need them. They're just in the diary. It's the curse of Outlook, and we've got rid of them. The way that we work now is that decision-making is done at the highest point of competence, not the highest point of authority. And that's a big difference, because the highest point of competence is often far lower in the organisation than the CEO. Trust me, I'm living proof of this. So actually, by allowing junior people to make quite senior decisions, as long as they're documented, and we document everything digitally, then actually the commercial agility of the company increases significantly. The way that we work, because the campus, you never know where anyone is. I mean, on a morning, you have no idea where people are. So we've organised the company into 4 13-week cycles across the year, and each department has to declare their top 5 priorities. The top five priorities have to dovetail with each of the other departments. So you can't have marketing launching a major initiative and not having the IT department not having that initiative in their top five. So the departments have to run around and align all their top five priorities. And I spend one day, 8 hours, I go through with the top 80 leaders in the company, and I make sure that they are absolutely aligned. Woe betide anyone who turns up to one of these meetings and finds that their top five is not aligned with the rest of the company. After that, we publish that list to the whole company, to all line managers, 400 line managers, and that is the top five for the next 13 weeks. If you go to another department and demand resource, and it's not in the top five, that department can say no. As a consequence, we don't get into this constant bickering about where we should be spending time and focus. As we've changed our operation internally, it's had significant results, positive results for our company. But the interesting thing is that because we use so much of our own technology to underpin this, a system called Unified Communications, that actually what we noticed is our customers started to be interested in what we were doing. I now have 4 full-time tour guides at my campus in Newbury. We passed our 800th tour last week from companies based in the UK. We've had 34% of the FTSE 100 now to our campus, and I do at least 1 tour a week. My staff are well used to me walking around with my arms flailing, followed by a group of people, usually in suits, looking bewildered at the way we work. The interesting thing about CEOs, somebody asked about CEOs not understanding what's happening in the kind of digital world. It's really interesting, actually, because I show most of the FTSE 100 people around myself. What I would say is that most of the CEOs that I meet, they understand a recession, they understand the impact it'll have on their business, they've got a rough idea of what they've got to do. They are terrified about Generation Y because they understand they're really important, but they have got no idea how to talk to this generation or to encourage them into their company or to keep them, more importantly. And that is the number one piece of obsession that I get as we walk around the campus. The other thing is that they have no idea at how badly they are trapped in these old workplace practices that they just embraced from their bosses when they started work 30 years ago. And it is only when they see the living proof of this that they start to get the confidence to actually break open and change the way that they work. Now, we say it's a community. You must be wondering whether it's anarchy, with all these people wandering around. They're not judged on attendance. They're only judged on output. They've only got 5 priorities. Surely you must have utter anarchy. One of the most interesting things is that when you've got community, is actually you get peer group pressure to actually deliver on your objectives. So what happens is the policing from senior management downwards on the organisation relaxes because the people within the relative peer groups starts to put pressure on each other to make sure they're doing their bit. And therefore what we've been able to do, and I'm glad about this, is we've been able to take away a lot of the kind of top-down management. Sure, we still have hierarchies, we still have rules, we still comply with the Data Protection Act, we're still SOX-proof, all those things, but they are in the background. What's in the foreground is community, and it's about peer group management rather than top-down management. So kind of who likes this approach, who hates this approach? We now sell this to companies as a package. We provide everything from time motion experts to explain to companies how they're really using their current offices, all the way through to all the technology solutions. And then we train and help the companies go through this change. What's fascinating is it works exactly the same way in public sector, big manufacturing companies, big service companies, all the way down to a small double glazing company I visited in Milton Keynes the other day. First of all, if you don't have senior management buy into change, it doesn't happen. Okay? Once you've got that, then you can start. Without that, you can do nothing. The next group that really love this are the people at the bottom of the corporate ladder, who are the volume people in the system. They move to this very quickly because they see it as empowerment. They are quickly followed, interestingly, by the unions. The unions love it because actually it frees up and gets rid of a lot of old working practices that they long recognised aren't suitable for the bulk of people in companies. That leaves you with a concrete block in the middle managers, the ones that spent 10 years trying to get that corner office. They fight it like hell. And the only way to get through that is to destroy their offices so they have no choice. And they will even erect filing cabinets around themselves to create virtual offices, which we also then have to take out. But the interesting thing is, within about 12 weeks, they have adapted. And the ones that can't cope will come to you with a white flag and ask to leave. In my case, 33 people left the company because they couldn't cope with the way that we work. The good news is the other 5,400 absolutely love it in the way that we work. So, if you're interested in numbers, if you think this is all fluff, let me give you a couple of numbers. So first of all, in terms of our performance, Vodafone's performance in the UK marketplace, there's actually somebody in the audience, I won't embarrass him, who, when I first joined, came to me and said, your company is like a bloody insurance company. I hate dealing with you. And he is my number one, or was my number one reference point in terms of how we had changed. And he actually told me, he said, I have never seen a transformation of a company in our industry to the degree and the speed with which you've changed Vodafone UK. In terms of actually hard numbers, we've put hundreds and millions of pounds of profit onto our bottom line as a consequence of changing the way that we work. We saved 24,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions. We've saved £27 million in travel and entertainment by introducing things like video conferencing and so on and so forth. We did over 7,000 hours of video conferences across the UK operation last year. And we now have 5,500 people working in the space that 3,200 people were working in a few years ago, and yet interestingly they all think they've got more space than they used to have. So, lower cost, more productivity, higher commercial agility, better employee engagement and less CO2 emissions. In the 2012 recession, there are not many things that give you 5 wins in one go. So, I'm Guy Laurence, I run Vodafone UK, and I believe we can change the way that Britain works. Thank you very much.